Hey everyone, welcome to my new channel called The Unknown Zone, where we talk about Bigfoot, conspiracy theories, cold cases, anything kind of like unknown and mysterious. But I also want you to respond, tell me your theories on whatever we're discussing, or if you've had similar experience to what we're talking about. I would definitely love to hear your thoughts. So it's time to start working on your aluminum foil hats. So come join me on this journey of the unknown zone.
Warning, the following topic I'm about to discuss, some viewers may find disturbing, while others may become obsessed with this case. For the evidence is bizarre, making no logical sense, and the moment you think you have all the answers, you will be proven wrong. 10 hikers set off on a Class 3 expedition into the Siberian landscape. 8 days later, 9 would die, and the only survivor had turned back early. On February 2nd, 1959, the 9 remaining hikers fled their tent in the middle of the night, cutting the tent from within and escaping into the dropping negative 30-degree weather, only in their regular clothes, leaving their winter gear folded nicely behind in the tent. 23 days later, a rescue team finally found some of the missing hikers. 2 bodies were found a mile away from the tent near the tree line, but the funny thing was they were only wearing their underwear. There were also 3 bodies found between the tent and the tree line. One had a fractured skull. Then the other 4 bodies were not discovered for another 2 months, and they were even more oddly found than the other ones. One had a fractured skull. Another one had crushed ribs. And then a woman was found with crushed ribs, missing eyes, and a missing tongue. And these hikers were wearing the clothes that belonged to the ones in the underwear. And the clothes that they were wearing were also radioactive. And then they also found radiation around the campsite as well. Doctors later diagnosed that they all died from hypothermia, despite the odd injuries. When regarding the state of the bodies, it was determined that there was no outward trauma to any of the bodies, and the internal traumas were too strong for any human to have done. There was also no evidence of strangers or trespassers around the campsite either, but there was a large piece of metal found nearby. Now we are going to discuss some of my favorite top theories for the Dyatlov Pass. Here are the top theories: that it was an avalanche or a natural disaster, killed by the government, murdered by prisoners, attacked by the indigenous people, rocket missile, Bigfoot Yeti, UFO, and then at the end is going to be my theory. So now we're going to discuss the avalanche theory. Now this theory would explain why they left their winter gear back in the tent, why they cut the tent from the inside and escaped only in their clothes. And it also could explain why some of the other hikers were wearing the other hikers' clothes. Maybe they had to change in a rush. Maybe they heard the avalanche coming, and in a moment of panic, they grabbed what they could, threw on whatever clothes they had, and left. But this theory does not explain the state of the bodies, especially the woman missing a tongue and eyes. It could maybe explain some of the force done to like the crushed ribs and maybe a fractured skull. But an avalanche isn't going to take out somebody's tongue. And it also doesn't explain the radiation found on the clothes of some of the hikers as well as around the campsite. Next, I'm going to discuss the rocket missile test and killed by the government in one setting. So the rocket missile test would explain the lights documented in the journals. It would explain the radiation, and it could also explain the large piece of metal found nearby. It also could explain the inhuman trauma but there was no record of a test, and there was no evidence of any exposure. This theory also ties in the theory that they were killed by the government. There were items found in the campsite that did not belong to them, including glasses, skis, and a military-grade cloth. And there's also evidence of a cover-up. There was no news broadcast or report in the local papers. Police were spotted tearing down flyers on campus that were informing students of the funeral. There was also a government letter stating an investigation was done on February 15th, but the rescue team did not find the bodies until February 25th, so that makes zero sense right there. But now I have to remind you, there was no evidence found that there were strangers or trespassers around the campsite. This also rules out the theories on the indigenous people, because again, there was no tracks or any evidence that anybody was around the campsite. Plus, they were pretty helpful in the case. One of the main reasons why people think that there was a Yeti or a Bigfoot after them is because when they developed the roll of film found on a camera, it looked like there was a picture of a Bigfoot standing behind a tree watching the hikers. And again, in the journals, some people had documented that they felt like they were being watched. People also connect the injuries to the Yeti because a Yeti would be strong enough to enforce those kind of injuries on someone. This theory could also explain why they would be in such a rush to get out of the tent. Maybe they heard the Bigfoot either howling or stalking around their campsite. And again, there was no footprints or evidence that there was trespassers or strangers around the campsite. So another odd theory that a lot of people think could have happened is a UFO or aliens did it. Some of the reasons include that people in the local area had claimed to have seen lights and spheres from February to March. And the lead investigator thought that the lights played a big part in what happened on that mountain. It also could explain the radioactivity found at the campsite and the radiation found on their clothes. It also could explain some of the odd traumas found on the bodies. Some people think that maybe they were abducted and experimented on, or that the aliens had something to do with the death right there on the mountain. And it could also explain that piece of metal as well. Okay, so now it is my turn. What is my theory? I think it is a combination of several things. I think that, I kind of have like two theories actually. I think that one or more of the hikers had planned the murder out from the get-go. Something I forgot to mention in the beginning of the video is that these group of hikers knew each other. They were part of a group that they created. So could have something happen in the past that could have triggered one or more of the hikers to decide, we gotta end this. That would definitely explain some of the trauma done to the bodies. If you had more than one hiker committing this act, you could have probably come up with the amount of injuries found internally. The other theory of mine is that hysteria could have played a part into the whole thing. They said that there were lights, they thought they were being hunted or followed. Maybe it could have been also the government. Like, I find that there's a lot of evidence pointing to a government cover-up, but why? Could they have launched that missile? And maybe they knew that these hikers are going to be in the area, and the only way for them to cover it up was to murder all of them. And they also could have covered up their tracks and said, oh no, there was no evidence that there was anybody in the area. All I know is that something happened while they were in that tent.
something triggered them to cut that tent to shreds from the inside and escape in the blistering cold only in their clothes, leaving their winter gear behind. The only explanation is that, again, something happened to trigger fear and panic for them to do that. Okay, so now we've reached the end of the video, and now it's my turn to ask you, what do you think? Do you think it was Yeti or UFO? Could have been an avalanche. I would love to hear your comments. Do you agree with my theory on it, or do you have your own? I would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching The Unknown Zone with me, Alaina Rivers. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. I'll see you guys later.